Hey, what's up guys? Welcome to the Honest Youth Pastor YouTube channel, the channel that helps believers use biblical discernment in all aspects of life. One of the ways we do this, if you've been following this channel for quite some time, is a weekly sermon review. And I kind of want to clear up some of the things about the sermon reviews that seem to be a little misunderstood. So we work off of a list that followers send in either on here, Instagram, or other social media platforms for sermons to look at, specifically pastors or churches. And when we look at these, we look at three specific things. And to me, it doesn't matter if it's a small church, a large church, or a conference. These three things I think should be in every single talk that someone gives. And those things are simply this. We look at, do they open the Bible and read the scripture? Because if you're not reading the scripture, what are you doing even preaching? The second one is we look at, do they exegete the scriptures using context and culture and bringing out the application of what's happening in the text? This is obviously done a number of different ways, depending on what you're talking about in the Old Testament or in the New Testament, or if it's apocalyptic literature, if it's a gospel, if it's a narrative, if it's a letter. All of these things, vary on how that's going to be brought out. But the point is, there should be some context given and some cultural background so we can understand what's happening in the letter or in the narrative or wherever we're at. And lastly, we look at, do they preach the gospel of Jesus Christ? And by that, simply, I mean, do they talk about Jesus' life, death, burial, resurrection, and ascension, and coming judgment again? Now, it's one of those things where it's, give or take on who they're talking to, that the various aspects of that are going to be brought up. But at bare minimum, we should talk about Jesus' life, death, and resurrection, and the change that brings in a person's life. And one of the things I don't do a great job at, I'm going to try to do a better job at, is mentioning that these sermon reviews are not about the pastor that we're reviewing. Yes, that pastor is the example that we're using, but it's nothing for or against the pastor, unless I do point that out, which I have in some sermon reviews. And one of the reasons I bring this up is because when we first started doing these sermon reviews, nobody was going to watch them, especially the pastors that I was talking about. But as this channel has gotten larger and more people are watching it, especially from Instagram as well as YouTube, some of these pastors have actually seen the sermon reviews I've done on them. A couple of them have actually reached out, and I've had conversations about how it's nothing personal against them. It's simply us using them as an example. And that's been met in varying ways. Here's my point though. As pastors, we should all want to be critiqued. Of course, we want that to come out in a positive way, but sometimes it's simply not going to. In fact, there's been a few people, less than a handful, that have actually taken me up on the offer of reviewing my sermons and giving me feedback. And every single time, that feedback was really good. Sometimes I didn't want to hear it, sometimes it didn't feel real great, but it has helped me improve as a pastor. And again, these aren't people that I know, these are complete strangers. So there is vulnerability there, and sometimes it hurts a bit. But at the end of the day, it actually helps me improve. Again, this started by me just driving to work and listening to sermons and asking people would they be interested in my take on these sermons. And surprise, surprise, apparently there are a number of you that actually are interested in these. Now, of course, I'm not the end-all be-all word on these sermons, but my hope is watching these full sermons within context does help you discern in your given life the pastors you listen to, either online or in person. And so I know some people are going to question my motives, some people are going to question my tactics, some people are going to question why I even do this, and that's fine. I'm totally fine with it. I just want you to understand the why behind it. So hopefully that clarifies a few things about why I do weekly sermon reviews, why I really press in on what I'm saying, and why we watch the full thing. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of insight about why I do what I do and the heart behind it. My hope is that regardless of who we cover or the sermons we look at, that we're going to find something in there that we can learn from. Sometimes it's going to be things that are really, really well done. Sometimes it's just going to be like a decent sermon that wasn't great or poor. And sometimes there are going to be sermons that we were going to look at and go, man, I never want to do that. But again, it's not necessarily anything about the pastor. Some of these sermons do reflect on the pastor, but overall, these are examples that we're looking at to say, what can we learn here? Do they open the scriptures? Do they exegete the text? Do they preach the gospel of Jesus Christ? And as I look for these things and try to put aside methodology, are these things at the heart of the sermons that I'm listening to and the pastors that are preaching? As always, if you want our free sermon review PDF guide, that will be in the links below. And if you have any questions that maybe I didn't cover here that I can clarify, leave a comment and I'll make sure I get to those comments and answer them. Also, if you want to support the work we do, there's a variety of ways to do that. The easiest way is to like our videos, watch them all the way through, and if you want to go above and beyond that, you can check out our Patreon link or buy some of the resources that we offer as well on our site. All links down in the description below. As always, thank you for watching, and if this was helpful, go ahead and leave a like, and I'll talk to you next time.